at least from my sense, is that the CBDCs is an interesting use case for blockchain technologies.
Hey folks, Flo here with Blockchain North. We're still at the Futurist 23 conference. I'm here with Randall Baran-Chong. I'm going to let you introduce yourself in 30 seconds or less. Who, what, why?
My name takes up about 30 seconds. So my name is Randall Baran-Chong. I'm the lead architect and steward of NorthstarDao. And NorthstarDao is a non-profit set up in Canada that's really trying to bridge the mainstream to Web3. And our Northstar is led by education and advocacy across all three levels of government.
Perfect introduction. Under 30 seconds, I think. I'll be asking you about NorthstarDao in a second, but first, for those who don't know what a DAO is, what it does, a little bit about how it works, maybe you could start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a DAO stands for a Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And what that is it's a mechanism that's in a very Web3 way to help coordinate. And it does so transparently on the blockchain. And what it's really made up of is mechanisms between proposing things, voting on things, and taking action on things. And so what we're trying to do as part of this DAO that's trying to promote Web3 is to operate in a very Web3 way, which is a DAO itself. So what we've done is we've really figured out how do we coordinate the Web3 ecosystem here in Toronto, which, it's a decentralized culture, but we need to be coordinated when it comes to a voice towards the government in terms of advocacy and how do we engage industry. And so we're using the DAO as the coordination layer around how we kind of come up with our points of view on policy, on what does the future look like to industry and government. So we're using DAO as that wrapper.
Can you tell us how you got involved in blockchain?
Yeah, so I got started with my first startup, rest in peace, called DoTell, which was trying to elicit, encode, and share our life stories on the blockchain back in 2017. I didn't end up being successful with it, but one of the VCs I pitched to ended up hiring me instead. So I got into VC, and our VC was involved in pre-seed Web3 companies. So this was back in 2017 and 18 when blockchain was the sexy, multiplier for startups back then, and everyone's tagging blockchain onto.
Still sexy.
It's still sexy. It's aged a little bit. It's maybe a bit in the mature, sexy category, like a J-Lo or something like that. But no. And so I've always been in love, though, not just with the technologies themselves, but the principles that Web3 stands for. Right? Decentralization, democratization, self-ownership, transparency, things like that. So that's what's really kept me in it since.
And I understand NorthstarDao also aims to advocate, and in particular to the government. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of great organizations in Canada that are doing stuff around the regulations. And you've got, the Canadian Blockchain Consortium, who does great work in terms of responding to these open consultations. Same with the Web3 Council. And we work with both of them. I'm on the Canadian Blockchain Consortium. But where we see a white space is, especially here in Toronto, which represents a lot of the grassroots ecosystem in Web3. So we're talking about the really small startups, we're talking about the creatives and creators, the artists, who are a really big part of the Web3 culture here in Toronto. They don't really have a voice, and they're highly fragmented, and they're busy building these projects from scratch, and so they don't have the time to necessarily think about policy, but they do know what they need in terms of government support from a regulatory or from an investment perspective. And so we're trying to address that white space to be a voice for the grassroots part of Web3, and not only to focus on regulation, but the investment case to government to say, look, we all believe that Web3 has a lot of promise and potential for Canada's economy. And so how do we make that case to them to make it obvious through use cases that we see here in Toronto? And why should we make that long-term bet in investing in these startups and helping them shape the future of Canada's economy?
It sounds like we would need a national blockchain strategy, something that I've seen in clean tech or in AI. It's hard to actually get the government to invest themselves so much, isn't it?
100%, and those two technologies you mentioned, AI and clean tech, were the only two technologies that were mentioned in the federal budget back in May 2023. And so those are the only ones who are really happy with what investments and bets that Canada's making. But what we've seen is when a country makes their decision to be a leader in Web3, like let's say Hong Kong, or which not country, but Hong Kong is its own kind of city-state, the UAE, and even the UK more recently, who actually allocated part of their £3.5 billion budget to AI and Web3, Web3 being one of the pillars. They said that they want to be a hub for Web3. And Canada hasn't made that declaration and put that flag on the top of the mountain yet. And so the recent study out of the Committee for Industry and Technology, which I've testified twice before, they said that Canada needs a blockchain strategy, a national blockchain strategy, and they need to engage the industry to help shape that, help define the roadmap, and define what success looks like, and what are the most useful use cases to build that future. And this is where NorthstarDao and a lot of these other stakeholders and the groups that we work with are going to help shape and define that, we hope.
What do you expect the response from government to be?
Well, the optimist in me says an enthusiastic yes and pat on the back and a check written, but you know, people have been in this space, and some of the companies that we've invested in as portfolio companies have worked with regulators over time to kind of help shape the regulations over time, you know, working through OSC sandboxes, for example, and stuff like that. So there's been these incremental kind of innovations through exemptions and through sandboxes, but what we really need to see is a kind of, you know, exponential jump in terms of the speed and in terms of the responsiveness for these regulations, because, you know, these technologies move exponentially, and when you have these other countries moving with exponential technologies, the catch-up is going to be incredibly hard the longer we wait to kind of also declare and put our flag in the mountain.